The first night they brought Mia home, the house felt different. It wasn't just the exhaustion of new parenthood. It was the way the shadows seemed to stretch longer in the nursery, the way the air felt heavier, colder. Claire and Mark dismissed it as nerves. After all, they were first-time parents, and Mia was a healthy, beautiful baby. But by the third night, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It started with the crying. Mia's wails were sharp and piercing, unlike any sound Claire had ever heard from a baby. They echoed through the house, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. When Claire rushed to the nursery, she found Mia staring at the ceiling, her tiny fists clenched, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Shh, it's okay," Claire whispered, scooping Mia into her arms. But the baby's skin was ice cold, and her cries only grew louder. The next day, Mark suggested it was colic. "Babies cry," he said, shrugging. "It's what they do." But Claire couldn't ignore the other things. The way Mia's eyes seemed to follow her around the room. The way her tiny fingers curled like claws when she reached for her bottle. And then there were the whispers. At first, Claire thought it was her imagination. But late at night, when the house was silent, except for Mia's occasional whimpers, she could hear them. Soft, indistinct murmurs coming from the nursery. They sounded like voices, but the words were impossible to make out. One night, Claire woke to the sound of Mia giggling. It wasn't the sweet, innocent laugh of a baby. It was low and guttural, almost like a growl. Claire's blood ran cold as she crept down the hall, her heart pounding in her chest. The nursery door was slightly ajar, and a faint, greenish light spilled out from the crack. Claire pushed the door open, her breath catching in her throat. Mia was standing in her crib, not sitting, not crawling, standing. Her tiny hands gripped the bars, and her head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and her mouth stretched into a wide, toothless grin. "Mia?" Claire stammered, her voice trembling. The baby turned to look at her, and the whispers erupted into a deafening roar. The walls of the nursery seemed to pulse and shift, the shadows twisting into grotesque shapes. Mia's tiny body began to convulse, her limbs elongating, her skin turning a sickly gray. Claire screamed, stumbling backward, as the thing in the crib let out a high-pitched screech. It lunged at her, its movements too fast, too fluid for a baby. She fell to the floor, scrambling to get away, but it was on her in an instant, its cold, claw-like hands gripping her throat. Mark burst into the room, his face pale with terror. "Claire, what's—" He froze as he saw the thing that had been Mia. Its head swiveled to face him, its glowing eyes narrowing. With a guttural growl, it released Claire and lunged at Mark, its tiny body twisting and contorting as it moved. Claire didn't wait to see what happened next. She ran, her heart pounding, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She didn't stop until she was outside, the cold night air biting at her skin. When the police arrived the next morning, they found the house empty. The nursery was in disarray, the walls covered in strange, blackened handprints. Mia's crib was overturned, and the baby monitor lay shattered on the floor. But there was no sign of Claire, Mark, or Mia. The house was eventually boarded up, deemed uninhabitable. But on quiet nights, the neighbors swear they can still hear the whispers, soft, melodic, and filled with a terrible, ancient hunger. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear the faint sound of a baby's laugh, echoing through the empty halls. They say the house is cursed. They say it's haunted. But the truth is far worse. Mia is still there, and she's waiting for the next family to bring her home.